Welcome to Now and Forever, a series of 10-minute reflections on good news spirituality, sponsored by the Charles and Catherine Creek family, headquartered in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and brought to you from Our Lady of Sacred Heart Parish in Watertown, New York. Vicki is with us again, and Pat. We're moving forward on this whole idea of culture and evangelization. I'm going to kick this off with the first paragraph from this series of reflections that we're working from. And this is a very simple, just get to the word culture. The word culture comes from the Latin cultus, which means worship. Like in common parlance, say they had a cult, it was good or bad, but it means some form of worship. In view of the fact that culture takes in the entire range of human activity, including things like marriage practices, hairstyles, ownership, and cuisine, you may wonder why worship gets top billing. It does because at the heart of the matter, culture is about perceived worth. The word worship comes from worthship. And worship is where you get your worth. When it comes to worth as recognized by a group of people, nothing is more definitive than their practice of religion or their very lack thereof. So, like we were saying before, the absence, if you don't have something in your culture, the absence is going to have perhaps, really serious effects. And if there is no worship, you're short on worthship. You don't have really a sense of true worth if without, that somehow or another you perceive that you have someone who is accepting of you, and you go from there. Okay, Vicki, what's this word this next paragraph talks about this in perspective. What's that got?
Pope John Paul II puts this into perspective. He said that the definition given to a human being will, to a large extent, determine the culture within which it is found. How we define ourselves is mainly about our identity and purpose, and that depends mostly on what we make of the notion of God. In a Freudian definition of a person, it's all about sex, not God. To the mind of a secular humanist, human beings are high-grade apes, equipped with a better central nervous system, but again, God doesn't figure in the definition.
Okay, see, I guess that's where you're talking about, what he's talking about there, that the way you define the individual then will have, to a large extent, will determine what your culture is about. So like in our world, if you're just a Freudian, you're not talking about God, you're talking about sex. If you got a secular humanistic view, you're not talking about a person with a spirit, or talking about God, or shared values, or love. I mean, the secular humanist really can't talk about love, because love. In fact, I was listening to NPR or something, and they got to talking about a guy who saying he didn't want to exist. He would rather not exist than exist. And to justify his view, he was saying, well, you got to suffer. So even if you have a moment of joy or something, who wants to suffer? So on that basis, he doesn't want to exist. I'm thinking, does this guy know anything about love?
This guy has got to be.
Well, anyhow, that's where it's at. That now, if you're whole, like that guy, his whole view, his whole idea of what man is he doesn't have that man is designed to love. So how can he get anywhere,
How do you get to work that morning? I mean, really?
Okay, Pat, let's see where you go with this thing.
All
We got
right.
another,
Since
got
these
another
two,
7 minutes to go.
since these two views are prevalent within our social environment, they exercise an influence on all of us, even though they may be strongly opposed to the assumptions on which these views are based. But how can that be so? Well, how often do we see God on the front page, hear prayer in school, or read editorials questioning the practice of abortion? When Cain slew Abel, God called him into an accounting with a stern reminder that the blood of your brother cries to heaven for vengeance. That reminder receives no notice in our culture. People are unwittingly led into belief that nothing cries to heaven for vengeance, only to discover that they are then well on their way to recreating hell on earth. However, we cannot be content with condemning erroneous ideas and counterfeit values. We must bring gospel truths into our culture, not by applying a thin veneer, but in depth and to their very roots, in the every aspect of the relationships of people among themselves with God.
Uh-huh. You know, that last sentence, and we'll go back to the prevalent view, but the last sentence is in not Gaudium Spes, but the Constitution of the Church. Its way it defines the church is the church by reason of her relationship to Christ. It is a sign, a sacrament or sign of intimate union with God and of relationships among one another, of bringing humankind back into relationship with God and one another. And that sentence right there, the relationships of people among themselves and with God, that's the sum and substance of what the church is all about. Our relationship to God and our relationships among ourselves. So go back to the social environment thing there. Even though we have these views, and we don't think we're affected by them. I mean, because they're out there. There's no accountability, no truth, do what you please sort of thing. But they do undermine our own beliefs. George Weigel, I can't put my finger on right what it was, but he pointed out in his book on John Paul II how we work from certain presuppositions. And one of them is where he talks about most people, like my father and my mother, they saw life through the eyes of faith. That was their perspective. They saw life through the eyes of faith, and they used reason to figure out how to faith apply. But Solzhenitsyn is saying, or not, George Weigel was saying, that we don't do that. We don't see life through the eyes of faith. We start out seeing life through the eyes of reason, and then faith is kind of like an accessory, that you can bring it in. But
when you need it,
yeah,
when you know.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And I think this is how we really, it's like a subconscious, in our level of unconscious or subconscious, these things that are going on in society undermine our own faith and our own readiness to respond to needs. So that's what that's what I think with that paragraph there is. And that reminder, the blood of your brother cries to heaven for vengeance, received no notice in our culture. See, because, if there is no God, why should you not go kill your brother? If it's to your benefit, why?
Yeah, you don't like the guy.
You don't like him. He's an irritant.
Take what he has, then it's yours.
Mhm.
So that's why we go back to the word culture to start with this paragraph. Start out. Remember it says,
Yep.
Culture. When you talk about culture, you're talking basically about the worth of the human person. That's what culture is based on. What is your worth? Culture is supposed to preserve your dignity and your purpose, and it's like the whole the preamble of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. That's the key thing there. This whole idea that the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is endowed to you by your Creator. It's not something you snatch out of the air or given to you by the government, like the French and the Mexican those constitutions. They say you derive these rights from the government. Now our Constitution says, no. Our government is supposed to protect those rights. You derive those rights by the reason of your being born. And they are God-given rights that the Constitution must protect.
But when you go back in time and you look at families, and you look at how, Sundays were usually a day of family.
Yeah?
Stores weren't open when I was a kid on Sundays. Stores weren't open. My grandmother wouldn't even let us mow the lawn on a Sunday because it was a day of rest. Thanksgiving nowadays isn't even a day of rest anymore for families. You got stores open and everybody wanting to get the best deal. So culture has changed over the years. I mean, what once was culture is now non-existent.
Correct. That's the same thing. That's where we're at, and that's why when you say like that sentence that's in there, the blood of your brother cries to heaven for vengeance. Very significant. That if you don't have that in mind, if that's not something about, then you have no. Why would I not do something? If that's his.
You go back to that though. You talk about how on certain days. I can remember back 63, so I can go back 50 years ago, and I can remember on the news one night, and it was either Christmas or Thanksgiving or one of the holidays. In the news broadcaster says, well, let's thank the people that had to work today, your firemen, your policemen, your telephone operators, because back at that time, they weren't all dial, in your nurses and your doctors, in you know, what they gave up to serve you. And today, it's like any other work day, you know? And it's not, it really isn't.
No.
It was a sacrifice that these people made.
Some people now are taking it. The real thing we have to do is get the Sunday back, reacquire Sunday. So that's what we leave you, folks. Thanks for listening. Come back next time. We'll move forward with the evangelization and culture. Take care. God bless.